Good afternoon, grade 8s. This is the first lesson for term 2. We will be talking about markets. You will find the work in your textbook, pages 96 to 102. What is a market? A market is defined as any contact or communication between potential buyers and potential sellers of a good or service. In the past, a market was a specific physical place where buyers and sellers would come together to negotiate the price and exchange of their goods. For example, an agricultural market where farmers bring their goods and customers come to see what they can buy. Today, with the aid of technology, markets are not just confined to a specific location. Cell phones and the internet allows buyers and sellers to still negotiate the exchange of goods, even though they do not meet face-to-face. The markets for goods and services. Firstly, businesses produce goods and services. These goods and services are sold to households. In return for goods and services, the households pay money to the businesses. This money forms part of the revenue or the profit of the business. As you can see, we have participants in the economy, we can also say. We have households, we have businesses, and then they all participate in the economy. So for now, you will see that this figure, figure 9.1, shows how businesses and households interact in the sale and purchase of goods and services. These transactions take place in the market for goods and services. Okay, so as you can see, we have households and we have businesses. Now the arrows mean that households buys goods and services from businesses. So businesses, the arrow goes from business to the household, offers goods and services to households. Then households pays money to these businesses for the goods and services. I'm going to explain that one more time. Businesses produces goods and services, and they offer these to households in the exchange for money. And that money that the households pays the business is the profit or the revenue that the business makes. The market for goods and services is defined as follows. Any interaction between households and businesses to negotiate the exchange of goods and services is a market, a goods and service market. And this market is also known as the product market. Consumer prices are determined by two factors, demand and supply. Firstly, the quantity of goods and services the businesses produce, we call that supply. Secondly, the quantity of goods and services the households are willing and able to purchase, and that we call the demand. What are the factors of production? Let us quickly recap. We have 4 factors of production. The first one is the entrepreneur. Secondly, we have natural resources. Then we have money or capital. And then we have human resources. That is the people that works for you. Households own these 4 factors of production. The factors of production are owned by households. Businesses use these 4 factors of production that households deliver as inputs in the production process. And then they pay remuneration, which is also known as salaries and wages, to the households for these 4 factors of production. We can also look at the other types of remuneration for the other factors of production. We've already spoken about laborers or the households offering their factors of production to businesses, and then they get wages and salaries in return. But we also need to know what is the remuneration for natural resources. If you want to start a business, you are going to build a building on a piece of land, or you're going to rent a building. And that is why for natural resources, which is land, the remuneration or the payment is rent. For capital, we've already spoken about labor. For capital, if you want to get a return or a remuneration or a payment for capital, it would be interest. Let me give you an example. If you put money in the bank and you want to save it, they pay you interest in return. So if you put 1 million rand in the bank and they give you interest on that, your 1 million rand will now be worth more. The same with when you borrow money or capital from other businesses, you have to pay that capital back with interest. Then, what is the remuneration for the entrepreneur? What is the motivation that an entrepreneur starts a business? Obviously, profit. Every entrepreneur wants to make profit. On page 100 in your textbook, you will see at figure 9.2 this diagram. Now, what does this diagram represent? Firstly, you will see that this is households and this is businesses. Now, as you know, the households owns the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And they offer this to businesses in return for remuneration, which is wages or salaries or rent or interest and even profit. So if you look at land, what is the remuneration for land? It's rent. And for labor, wages. And for capital, interest. And entrepreneurship, profit. So the household who owns the factors of production sells the factors of production to businesses. And businesses use these factors of production to produce goods and services. And if businesses buys these factors of production from households, they pay them back in the form of rent, wages, interest, and or profit to the households. Now, factors of production, as we already spoke about, are traded in the factor market. So the 4 factors of production, which are owned by households, are traded in the factor market. Business purchase these factors of production from the households in the factor market. Factor market is also known as the resource market. Factor markets can be subdivided into markets for each of the different factors of production. We have a labor market, we have a money market, and we have a land market. You will find this information also on page 100. The factor market can be subdivided into markets for each of the different factors of production. The labor market, as you can see here, is where labor is traded. This is the market in which job seekers and employers interact with one another. Then we have the money market or the financial markets. And this is where financial capital is traded or money is traded. This market is made up of banks and the stock market. Now, if you are not sure what the stock market is, this is the market in which shares of companies are traded. It is the market where people who have money to invest interact with people who want to borrow money. Then we have the land market. The land market is where land and other natural resources are traded. So these are the different factors of production, the markets for each factor of production. You will now see that I've attached a picture for those that do not have their textbooks with them for activity 9.1 and 9.2. And that you will find in your topic 9 for markets. Activity 9.1 is on page 98 and activity 9.2 you will find on page 101. You have to please complete these activities, and as soon as you get back to school, we will mark it together. So we will be checking whether you have completed this work or not. Thank you, grade 8s.